My ex stole my $15,000 car and said, "Good luck getting it back." So I reported it stolen, and he got arrested at his girlfriend's place. I never thought I'd be one of those people sharing their crazy, nuclear revenge story on here, but life has a way of surprising you. If you told me a year ago that I'd be standing in a police station filing a theft report on my own car, I wouldn't have believed you. Yet, here we are. For some context, I'm Ophelia, a 38-year-old woman living in Louisville, Kentucky. I've worked my butt off to get where I am today. I'm a freelance interior designer, and let me tell you, it hasn't been easy. There were years when I was eating ramen noodles 5 nights a week and wondering if I'd ever make enough money to live comfortably. But I made it. One of my proudest moments was buying my truck, a 2015 Toyota Tacoma that I saved for years to afford. It's not fancy or brand new, but it's mine, and it's worth around $15,000. I love that truck. It's my baby. Enter Vince. Oh, Vince. Where do I even begin? Vince and I met about 3 years ago. He was charming, funny, and just rough around the edges enough to make him interesting. At first, he seemed perfect. He worked odd jobs, claimed he was saving up to start his own business, and always had some story about why his life hadn't quite come together yet. I should have seen the red flags. He borrowed money from me just until payday, and somehow never paid it back. He stayed over at my place all the time but never offered to chip in for groceries or bills. And then there was the cheating. Oh, yeah, he was a real gem. We broke up about 6 months before this whole car theft debacle. I kicked him out of my apartment after catching him texting some woman he swore was just a friend. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. After the breakup, I thought I was free of him. I blocked him on social media and ignored his half-hearted attempts to reconnect. For a while, I felt like I could breathe again. Then, out of nowhere, he showed up at my apartment one morning. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was making coffee when I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, there he was, standing there with that stupid smirk on his face. "Hey, oh," he said like nothing had happened. I wanted to slam the door in his face, but for some reason, I didn't. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I was too shocked to react. Either way, I let him in. He sat on my couch and gave me this long-winded apology about how he'd messed up and wanted to make things right. He said he missed me, that he still loved me, that he'd changed. It was all BS, but for a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. We talked for maybe half an hour before I told him I wasn't interested in getting back together. He looked annoyed but didn't push it. He left shortly after, and I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I went outside to head to a client meeting and my truck was gone. At first, I thought it had been towed or stolen by some random thief. I was freaking out, pacing the parking lot, when I saw a text pop up on my phone. It was from Vince. It said, "Thanks for the ride. Good luck getting it back." I nearly dropped my phone. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My ex had stolen my truck. I called him immediately, but of course, he didn't pick up. I left a voicemail, trying to keep my cool. I told him to bring my truck back or I'd call the cops. He texted back a few hours later, "You've got no proof it's yours. Try me." I don't know if I've ever been that angry in my entire life. I spent the rest of the day calling the police, filing a report, and gathering every piece of evidence I could find to prove the truck was mine. I had the registration, the purchase receipt, and even photos of me standing next to it the day I bought it. The police were sympathetic but said it might take time to recover the truck since Vince wasn't answering his phone and his address wasn't listed anywhere. I tried to play it cool, but inside, I was fuming. I knew Vince was a loser, but this was a whole new level of low. Over the next week, I kept calling the police to follow up and tried to track him down myself. That's when I found out he was staying with his new girlfriend in Lexington. I saw a picture of the two of them on her Instagram, posing in front of my truck, like it was theirs. She even captioned it, "Our new ride." I wanted to scream. Instead, I got smart. I saved the photo and added it to the growing pile of evidence I was collecting. Then I called the police in Lexington and told them what was going on. They said they'd keep an eye out for the truck but couldn't promise anything. That wasn't good enough for me. I wasn't going to let Vince get away with this. So, I did what any determined, slightly unhinged woman would do. I drove to Lexington myself. I parked a few blocks away from his girlfriend's house and waited. Sure enough, a few hours later, I saw Vince walk out of the house and climb into my truck. I couldn't believe the audacity. He drove off, and I followed him at a distance, trying to stay calm. He went to a gas station, and that's when I made my move. I called the Lexington police and told them exactly where he was. I waited in my car, heart pounding, as they pulled up and confronted him. It didn't take long for them to figure out the truck was stolen. I had all the paperwork to prove it, and Vince, well, he didn't have a leg to stand on. They arrested him right there in the gas station parking lot. Watching him get cuffed was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. But this isn't the end of the story, oh no. Things got even crazier after that. After the police arrested Vince at the gas station, I finally started to feel like justice was on my side. I handed over all the paperwork to prove the truck was mine. Registration, insurance documents, and even a few selfies of me with the truck on the day I bought it. The officers didn't take long to piece it all together. Vince was caught red-handed, and the smug look on his face melted into panic as they loaded him into the back of the squad car. It was glorious. The truck was impounded temporarily while the legal stuff was sorted out, but the officers assured me I'd have it back soon. They even let me take a photo of Vince in cuffs, being led into the police car. I didn't post it anywhere, yet, but just having that photo felt like a small victory. I drove back to Louisville that night, exhausted but feeling a weight lifted off my chest. But Vince wasn't done trying to weasel his way out of trouble. A few days later, I got a call from his new girlfriend, Marlene. She started yelling at me, accusing me of ruining Vince's life and calling me all sorts of names. Apparently, Vince had told her some sob story about how the truck was his, and I'd set him up out of spite. I let her rant for a bit, then calmly asked, Marlene, do you have $15,000 lying around to bail your boyfriend out? Because if not, maybe you should rethink your life choices. She hung up on me. That was satisfying, but I wasn't done yet. The legal process took a couple of weeks. Vince had been charged with theft, and because he already had a record, surprise, surprise, the police weren't going easy on him. During that time, I got my truck back, and the first thing I did was install a new steering wheel lock and a GPS tracker. No one was ever taking it from me again. Meanwhile, I started hearing from mutual acquaintances that Vince was in even deeper trouble. Turns out, Marlene dumped him when she realized he'd lied to her about the truck. Apparently, she went through his phone while he was locked up and found texts from at least 3 other women. Classic Vince. She even messaged me to apologize for the way she'd talked to me, saying she had no idea he was such a liar. I didn't feel bad for her, she knew he was my ex, and she still flaunted their relationship on social media. But I told her, at least you're smart enough to leave now. Good luck. But here's where it gets even better. Remember how Vince stole the spare key to my truck? Well, I had no idea, but he'd also stolen a few other things from my apartment during that last visit, some cash I'd kept in a drawer, a pair of AirPods, and even a bottle of expensive perfume. I didn't notice at first because I was so focused on the truck, but once I did, I added it to the theft report. The police told me that when they searched his stuff after the arrest, they found the stolen items at Marlene's house. So, on top of the car theft charge, they tacked on petty theft charges as well. The guy couldn't help but dig his own grave. At this point, Vince was stuck in jail because he couldn't make bail, and his family wasn't about to help him out. His mom, who'd always made excuses for him, finally threw up her hands and said she was done with his nonsense. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. The cherry on top. While Vince was in jail, he lost his job at the auto repair shop he'd been working at. Apparently, his boss had warned him about showing up late and slacking off, and getting arrested was the final straw. When I heard about it, I laughed so hard I cried. It was like karma was taking a victory lap. In the end, Vince pleaded guilty to avoid a longer sentence. He ended up with 6 months in jail, a year of probation, and a hefty fine to pay for the impound fees and court costs. I didn't get any of the money he owed me, but at that point, I didn't care. Knowing he was finally facing the consequences of his actions was enough for me. After all that, I felt like I had my life back. My truck was safe, my ex was out of my hair, and I'd learned some valuable lessons about trust and boundaries. To celebrate, I treated myself to a weekend road trip in my truck, just me, the open road, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd stood up for myself and won. And as for Vince? Last I heard, he was couch surfing and trying to sweet-talk another poor woman into believing his lies. Good luck with that, buddy. I'm done cleaning up your messes. Revenge isn't always the answer, but in this case, it felt damn good.